All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the book club. I don't know what week this is. Are you tracking that, Angie? Do you know, is it like week 7 or something? Who knows? Okay, we're on chapter
I
4.
not for sure, but week 7 sounds right.
Okay, so we're on chapter 4. We're kind of halfway through chapter 4, so we're going to pick up where we left off. So I think Angie's going to start us today. Um, give me one.
Okay.
Chapter
Uh,
4. Is there a page, Andy? Angie, do you have a page?
Yeah, so if you're in the hard book, the paper, it's 19 and it's the second paragraph down.
Thank you. Are you guys going to post it on the thing?
uh,
Oh, Adelia's coming.
yeah, I can share it
That'd be
too.
great.
And
I'm just gonna wait 1 second for Adelia, if that's okay.
Thank,
yeah, of
thank
course,
you.
yeah.
Hi. Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
Adelia.
Adelia.
Hi,
Okay.
guys.
We were doing our chit chat and you just logged in at the right time because we were just gonna start.
Great.
Is
Thank
this where
you.
we are, Ange? Oh, sorry.
It's the paragraph starts with this was not the only powerful energy. So no, I don't see that.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm starting where it's kind of a pinky mauve.
Are you going to read it out loud, Angie?
Yeah, should I?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this was not the only powerful energy I was experiencing, I'm sorry. I had been sitting in a full lotus posture with my hands resting on my crossed feet. In that position, the whole of my hands, arms, and shoulders formed a closed circle. Now that complete circle had become another one of those force fields. I could neither move forward nor sideways. I was locked in what I could only describe as a perpendicular energy flows. Whenever I breathed out, the flows became more tangible and intense. The entire experience was so completely enthralling that I did not actually regain awareness of my surroundings. I only came down far enough to see that my body was overcome by these energy flows. Then I heard, um, oops. Then once again I heard, do you or do you not want to know what is behind you? Okay, well, I picked this to share because during a meditation, it was actually a guided meditation from YouTube. Okay, I had this experience happen where it felt like I was in a force field and I couldn't move myself, but I started to feel as if part of me was being lifted, not my body lifted up off the chair, but like something was almost starting to come out this way forward. I don't know if you can see my hand forward like this. But what happened with me is it scared me. And because I don't know, uh, I was I think, I don't know that I'm a fearful person in general, from childhood. And so I was like, ah, like this. And then so it stopped, and I never had one of those experiences again. And I was just, when I read this, I just thought of Michael and I mean, he was a little extreme, like going out sitting for 3 hours, when he was there camping with his friends. I just feel like he is such a what is the word? Such a like his own trailblazer. Like he was just willing to do anything and everything, not care what people think, not be afraid of these. I mean, these are new experiences. I mean, he has this loud booming voice in his head. Do you or do you not want to know? And then he has his experiences where he's getting lifted out of his body and he's not scared at all. He's just like, bring it on. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to share about that is it can be a scary cat and have
Thanks, Angie.
stopped my own growth at times, I would say.
I'm not sure if that's my biggest takeaway is that you're a scary cat.
No,
Yeah,
but
me neither. Me neither.
I think it's pretty natural for parts of us to be scared of totally new experiences. That makes sense. Did anybody else have experience like that where they were sort of frozen or taken over, couldn't move? Natasha?
Yeah, I mean, when I get into deep meditation, I know I'm in deep meditation because you become almost paralyzed, and I love it. However, that's also because and I've also had the experience Angie's talking about. It sounds like you're about to astral project, Angie, and which is when you leave your body and you kind of soar. I've only done that once. Or it sounds like your energy, your kundalini energy maybe was starting to move. I don't think it's a scaredy cat thing. I think that the way I was raised was with this whole thing about psychic powers and astral projection and stuff being real. Like it was part of my belief system already as a very young child. So I was looking forward and actually actively looking for experiences that were like that. So I just wanted to say that, like, I don't perceive you as a scaredy cat at all. I think if you had been raised with sort of a consciousness around that and been like, ooh, someday I want to astral project, you probably would have felt excitement when that fear happens. And, but I think yanking back from it is the more common response from what I've heard when people start going there, like pulling back, because it is shocking all of a sudden having like feeling your soul move as it relates to your body. And also, the deepest meditations I've had sometimes do come with a period of very bizarre discomfort, like my skin feeling like there are ants crawling on it. I've had that feeling before too. And at first, that really made me uncomfortable. But then I learned that it was actually an indication that I was about to go into another level of depth with meditation. So when the ant crawling thing would start happening, I would be like, oh no, this is good. This is good. Like lean into the feeling. And then I would lean into the feeling and the discomfort would pass, and then I would go into a much deeper state of meditation. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Hmm.
Thank
I've
you, Natasha. I want to share too.
Thank
Oh,
you,
Wendy,
Mixed
I think
Bag.
we'll Susie, then Wendy.
Okay.
um, um, I loved how Natasha described that. I have to say I was raised in an environment similar to what Natasha described. My mom has a PhD in transpersonal psychology.
Hmm.
And so as she walked her journey from S to indigenous practices to just all different kinds of things, I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and she never pushed it on us, but she always opened the door to experiences. And one of the things that I went through with her was this whole series on what the initiation ceremonies were for different cultures around the world when a child transitioned to an adult. And and um and so I was able to participate in some of those, and just it got me into practicing group work and breath work. And then over time I became more in touch with that part of myself, so that even when I wasn't within a group, I knew what it felt like. And so the same thing of where um, I don't have a fear when it happens, but for me, like one of the most beautiful ones is when I felt Jesus in me, and literally Christ's energy was like a halo around me, and then it lifted my spirit. And then there's like air under your feet. I was off the ground, and like you can panic, but it's like, no, you don't have to. And then is this is my inner conversation. Um, and being still, it doesn't matter. It's an experience. The hard part for me was when I tried to be in motion. And so like sometimes when I was in the corporate world and I was preparing for something that was very intimidating, I would want to get in touch with my God energy so that I would be confident and grounded and not deterrable from the outside factors. And but it's weird because there's this dissolving of boundaries between the body and the outer world. And so I love reading this book because I'm experiencing all these different phases. And um, anyway, that's my experience with it. Is it that the dissolving of boundaries can be really bizarre on the physical body. So I love reading this book. I'm glad, so happy we're doing this. Thanks.
Perfect. Wendy.
Yeah, I've had a handful of, I've been meditating since I was a teenager, and my definitely didn't have parents who understood it or anything like that. In fact, I remember I took transcendental meditation, a course of when I was 16 or 17 or something. And so I was trying to meditate twice a day for 20 minutes each time. And I can remember, telling my parents, like, I'm just going to be in there for 20 minutes. And so please don't try to talk to me or whatever. And I remember early on one time meditating, and then my father coming and knocking on my bedroom door. Wendy, when you're done meditating, it's dinner. I was like, so mad. But anyway, I have had a few experiences of meditating and just floating, just getting into a state where I was floating, and there was nothing else but that. There, I couldn't hear anything around me, and it was pretty amazing. The problem with it is, like everything else in my life, I feel like I don't have time for it because you can't do that just in a short meditation. It takes a little bit longer to get there. And I am unwilling to set aside that much time, and, you know, definitely unwilling to sit for 3 hours and do it the way Michael Singer did. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, we're going to be talking about time next week. So, and whether you do or do not have enough time to do that. There's an old story about Napoleon, and then he would take a bath, I guess, every day for 2 hours, unless he was really, really pressed for time and there was a lot of urgency. Then he would take a bath for 4 hours. Um, so let me see if I can. It's interesting. Here, I'm gonna share this and just kind of talk about this next kind of phase. As far as this goes, it's like compared to all of you, it's all my, I meditated every day for 20 years, and I was very boring. I got into very, deep states and all of that and stuff, but I never had anything really extracurricular happen. And to be honest, actually, we did kind of have a background in it. My dad's form of spirituality, he started with I don't know if anybody's heard of the Seth Speaks books, and then also the Carlos Castaneda books. Where Carlos Castaneda went out into the desert and dropped a lot of peyote and that kind of stuff. So that was his background. So my dad actually had a couple of kind of leaving your body type of experiences and stuff. So we had a little, I mean, when I was 10 years old and Angie was 6, I was having deep, meaningful conversations with my father about all of this stuff. He would talk about, there is no individual perception. We would talk about how, we have no idea whether we're seeing the same color when we're talking about the color green, et cetera, so we were very kind of immersed in this. So it's interesting to me that it's like, I did all that meditation, and I don't know, I think it was from very early on I realized that all those things, like there's this famous guy, Uri Geller, I think, who could bend a spoon with his mind. Somehow very early on I realized that that's all stuff you can do. Like you can actually, like you could do all of it. You can astral project, you can do all of it. But none of that stuff, it's like you can also do handstands, but doing handstands is not going to necessarily free you from the bondage of self and life. And I think one of the things that's really interesting as we go through this chapter too, it's like, you know, whatever our deep experiences are with this, um, they, I was going to say they fade, but it's not only that they fade, but they also get very eclipsed by the ego and the parts and all of that too. And that, that's the sort of, it's like, anyway, we'll get, we'll get to some of it as we go.
May I ask
But
a
here,
question about that?
yeah.
Just because I know that my brother and I had very different experiences regarding the metaphysical. growing up, and so I was wondering, your dad spoke to you about that stuff, but did he also include Angie in those conversations since she was so
Oh
much
yeah,
younger?
she was in the car with us. She was a little bit younger, but yeah, she was privy to all the conversations for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember that my dad talked about one time he had out of body experience to where he just floated, lying in bed, he floated to right a few feet above himself. I remember that, and I remember him reading Rajneesh, like 28 different Rajneesh books. That's what I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, he read all sorts of stuff. Um, okay, so let's see here. We're sharing this screen. Yeah, so I think, you know, there's
Does
no question.
Adelia want to say anything about it?
Yeah, Adelia, do you want to say anything?
I mean, I read Richard Bach also. That's what you guys were reminding me.
Hmm.
Um, but and also as a result of, 12-step stuff and people, we there was one lady who um who took who took things like in bite-sized pieces and interjected um Enod Milvado, which means there is none but he, like to realize that God is in everything. And I did that for a while. I don't know, think I'm explaining it so well, but it took a lot of the fear. I mean, I'm a really fearful, or have been a really fearful person. What you see is actually a better version than what I used to be. Used to be even more paralyzing. And this work of interjecting very often this phrase that's like everything is God, kind of loosely translated, actually took away a lot of fear and helped people think. Then I found out it's a problem. At least for Jews, it's a problem because we're not really supposed to disconnect from our body. We're actually supposed to walk through. So I stopped doing that. And then I found Evan. Still trying to work it all out, though. But anyway, that's roughly what I had to contribute.
Wonderful, great, thank you. So, and Wendy, when you touched on this sort of notion of there being nothing else, you know, which he talks about in here, and you know, we're sort of picking up. Let me share the screen. We're picking up here where he talks about. Let me change the size of this. Okay. Perhaps you would like to ask where I went. That's reasonable, but I'm unable to answer that question. I only know that each time I came back, I was in a more elevated state than when I left. You know, so kind of speaking to what you talked about, it's like we go and we experience these sort of states and this altered state of consciousness, and then we sort of come back to this state of consciousness, this sort of more real world state of consciousness where we identify ourselves as these individual people. There's a whole rant that I want to go on in terms of like my dad's favorite book, Odelia, was called I Am That, which you know, which I was sort of just playing with it as you were talking about it. There's a chess set across the thing, and I was just going, you know, it's like the idea of separation between me and the rook on the chessboard is only that, an idea. You know, which kind of was very similar to kind of what you were talking about. But I feel like that's a whole like right turn into crazy land that I'm going to pass upon for the moment.
Could
But
I respond to Adelia's thing real quick?
yeah,
I just want to say, Odelia, that is really beautiful. Is it Odelia or Odelia? I always say your name wrong.
Odelia.
Odelia. Okay, thank you. Would you mind posting that in the chat? Because when you said it in Hebrew, it was so gorgeous, and I'd kind of like to start saying that.
I mean, what, in Hebrew? You want me to post it in the chat?
Yeah, yeah. Like, would you mind? Because I'm going to Google it, and then so I can pronounce it right, and like I'd
Sure.
actually like start saying that as a mantra in Hebrew.
Sure. It's actually very, very, very powerful. It is.
Yeah, I felt it when you said it. Like the second you said it, I was like, "Whoa, yeah." And
yeah. I mean, that, well, since we're talking about it, it's like that's a very powerful practice.
mhm.
Like this dissolving of the separation between us and the things that are around us.
The
Like
story.
right. It's essentially, you know, totally negating the story. So in other words, this whole notion of like, let's say Wendy and I were sitting across from each other, and I'd say that's Wendy and that's Evan. That's all an illusion and a lie. And so really there is, if you take away our mind thinking about it, there is, it's like, how do I know that I'm not actually Wendy? You see what I'm saying? It's like I have to go to my mind in order to create that separation. And so this sort of oneness with everything that there is a very kind of real aspect of God. And just the more we step into this way of being, the less separation there is between us and everything else. There is just this oneness. And essentially, that place you talked about, the place that he touches on here, I think I'd say without making it a goal, that's really what we're sort of doing is we are learning to live that space with our eyes open, walking around at the supermarket, driving, etc., is to be in that space of no separation. It's interesting because currently, right now, I'm really working very diligently with shame, and it's quite fascinating to see. And we had some guests over, and I, like everybody else, it's like I have social anxiety and fear of like, oh, they're not going to like me or whatever. But I haven't worked on it directly, but I'm really noticing like that's really starting to fade. Like I'm not working on social anxiety or anything like that, but I just find myself just being myself and being relaxed and comfortable, just being me more of the time. And it was Mandy's friend. So I really didn't know them I barely knew them. I'd met them once 15 years ago. Um, but it was just so fascinating. It was so pleasant to just be myself. And then Mandy told me afterwards, like, the husband really liked you and wants to hang out more. And I was just like, that's interesting. I did zero to like try to like impress him or make him like me. I was just kind of there. And I think to some degree, that's a little bit of an inkling of what we're talking about here of just less separation, less busy, less story, just more being, if that makes sense. Um, what a freewheeling conversation this is. Okay, Susie.
Uh, I wanted to add to that the more I've gotten in touch with that energy in my life, that is when I began calling God the oneness and divine
Mm,
source.
I love
And
that. The oneness. That's fantastic. I've never heard that.
oh yeah, and I write in my journal to oneness. And what what is also amazing about it is like so much of what we do is relate to humans, but the deeper I relate to the oneness, I begin to connect with all inhabitants of the earth, the animal inhabitants and the garden inhabitants and the moon. And I think that's where my relationship with nature has gone to such a connecting level. And so when you hear me talk about my garden or my fish or my caterpillar, um, it's because and the dog, like I had the deepest connection with my dog. I felt like she was interwoven in my soul.
Mm,
And it's partly because when connecting with that energy, it does like make everything connected. And
I love it.
it's it's it gives me a lot of I don't know, perspective.
You know, that's really great. I was talking to somebody, I forget who this morning, but it was um we were talking about the aspects and attributes of God, right? And God's, not the best word for it, perhaps. But this essential thing that we're talking about, this energy, um, it has attributes and it has characteristics. And the more that and so like this oneness that you're talking about is absolutely one of those things. Um, and let me share the book here because I want to sort of touch on this sort of next piece. So here he was in this elevated state, and he says there was no sense of urgency to hold on to the elevated state. And I think that's one thing that started to happen for me that was very different. And I know Natasha and I have talked about this and about, having an awakening experience and then wanting to hold on to it, and feeling it slipping away and going, no, 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 I want to keep this. And it's like that's one thing that and I has really started to happen for me a lot, especially over the last 4 years. Um, because I'm lucky enough, I get to experience a lot of peace. But one of the things that's really interesting about it is I don't hold on to it. I don't expect it or want it to hang around. I understand that it will come and go as it needs to. And somehow that relationship of not holding on to it allows it to really, come in and stay as long as it needs to. I don't know the direct relationship, but it just stays more because there's no pressure. Like imagine like a teenager comes home, and the second the teenager comes home, the mother says, "Where were you? And what's going on?" It's like now the teenager wants to leave, and and then the mom's saying, "Well, don't go. You don't eat, right?" It's kind of like that. It's kind of like because there's no pressure on happiness to stay or go or anything, then it feels comfortable to stay, if that makes any sense. But again, I bring it up because I recognize it pretty immediately as one of these attributes of God is God is not concerned about pain going away or being here. In other words, God's comfortable with life exactly as it is, which is a weird thing to say. It's like God's comfortable with us being in pain. And this is, again, you've all heard me say, I think many times, is when we start to get into paradox, I start to get very happy because then I know that we're really talking about something that's really important because it's challenging to talk about. As much as God wants to heal us, there's no question about that. The second we start to let go and surrender, we start to get healed. God is also completely unconcerned that we get healed. Like it's totally fine. Like God is perfectly happy for us to keep making the same mistake 40 times. Like in this infinite patience. It's like it's okay. You'll get there. So there's no urgency about like you got to get it now. Let's go. We got to figure this out. It's like, yeah, it's like you're in pain now and that pain is going to lead you ultimately to peace and there's just no urgency around that. So that's one of the signs of awakening, so to speak, right? Is you're just not concerned about whether you're happy or not. Because that happiness that we're generally concerned with is the ego or the parts trying to attain and hold on to that happiness. It's only a part ever that is going to try to hold on to happiness. Does that make sense? Right. It's an ego piece that's going, no, 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 don't leave me. And of course, that's reminiscent of all the abandonment that we felt. It's like, no, it's finally good, you know. Um, so I wanted to share that piece. We kind of already touched on this next piece. I'm sorry, did somebody put something in the chat there?
Yeah, I was just saying that what you just described, Evan, reminded me of what Odelia said was so powerful, that God, that her Jewish faith wants her to stay in her body. It's not about escaping. And that's like a description of why the human experience is so important. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, so we're supposed to stay in our body. So
Oh
that's
no, that's
so
really
important.
great. That's really great, Susie, because I'll tell you my, first 24 years of program of all the 12-step programs. I was trying to get away from my earthly experience. I was trying to meditate it away. I was trying to get away from it in every way that I could. And now, if you notice, whenever we're talking about things, and especially if we're talking about energy, feelings, I'm always bringing you to your body. I have very much found God in my body. And it's kind of funny because for me, it kind of goes the opposite. It's like going down to the depths is what again, we get into paradox, but going down into the depths of my body is what opens up the heavens. It's not this, oh, I'm up here and I'm up here. Going down into my gut, down into my toes, getting grounded in my body is what actually, I remember when I was first really having a change, I remember saying like imagine like the solidity of God and solidity of the body. Imagine something that was only this tall. How is that? Like an inch tall, right? Now, if that thing was an inch tall and it was like a half an inch thick, you'd be very worried about a wind coming coming along and blowing it over. But imagine something that's an inch tall that's 700 miles wide in each direction. Imagine that tipping over. It would be impossible for that to tip over. And that's this kind of groundedness that I started to experience in my body of and the absolute essential safety of God. It's like when you're so grounded and you're so deeply inset, you're so solid. And the Bible talks about this same kind of notion of building your house on shifting sands. You're going to always feel like this. The meaning of that is when you build your house on the foundation of ego or money or relationships, you're going to always be afraid that it's going to tip over and fall over. You're going to lose money. You're going to lose this person's love. That's the shifting sands. But if you build your life on this foundation of this direct experience of this divine, which is 100% grounded and could never fall over, right? Then you all of a sudden start to feel a stability and an ease and a comfort and a peace, knowing that it could never fall over, it could never fall apart, if that makes sense. And again, we're sort of touching on these essential aspects and the experience of God, because that's all we're really interested in. Ideas of God, who cares? We're only talking about it with words and ideas so that we can triangulate enough so that each of us has a direct experience. Right? So Susie or Daly, this notion of walking around and looking at things and seeing no separation. That's a great practice. And that's something that could eventually trigger truth, right? It could trigger truth. It's not, if I say to you with just words, we're all interconnected and there's absolutely no separation. Well, that's just words. And you could go around and you could get in an argument with somebody else. You could have this idea. No, we're all, and somebody says, oh, we're all these, each individual pieces of God. And then you would be like, no, we're all totally connected. And you could only get in a fight about it, right? If it was just in your head. If you had the direct experience of non-separation, I think there's a whole movement called non-duality, right? Duality is separation. If you have that experience, you could listen to somebody, for an hour talk about it in a complete wrong way and not even feel the need to say anything about it. You know what I mean? Like, because you experience it, you have it, you own it, you know? Okay. Did anybody want to say anything right there at this as I take a breath? Okay. Let's see. I want to move to the next thing. Okay, I think this is really interesting, and I'm guessing that we've all had this kind of experience. Oops. That experience of being in this deeper state, and then this experience of sort of coming back. And he says, I could have lain there forever, melting into the peace that surrounded my sense of presence. Right? We've all had that deep meditation and this coming back. And then he says, when I finally got up, the movement of my body was unfamiliar to me. And so what this touched on for me is so often I'm in this space or in this state. And then there is this sort of thing of like, I can't imagine myself moving. But then movement happens. And I did a video this morning that I shot that I'll post on the in the thing, talking a little bit about this. But we have this in the same way, like this is such an interesting conversation, right? In the same way, I'm talking about this chess piece, and I have no separation from the chess piece, right? I have stories of it, or if I'm sitting across from Wendy, I have stories about how she's her, etc. We get rid of the story. You start to notice that life happens. And there's this ego notion that comes up afterward. Like let's just do this for a second. Let's just all stop and just watch yourself. Watch your body's movements and the things that it does. Just observe yourself for a couple of minutes here. And just notice, we're not trying to stay totally still and be in a meditative space, right? Allow yourself to move, not don't go run a mile or anything, but just allow yourself to move naturally as you would. And if you start to watch your movement, you'll notice that you are not moving yourself. Your body does it, and then the ego comes in afterward and says, I did that. Like I just saw Wendy shake her head, like kind of go like this. And I bet you didn't go, I'm going to shake my head now. It just happened. Right. And so like my thumb just twitched, independent of me directing it in any way or doing anything. My foot on the ground just shifted. If you start to watch yourself, you'll see that your body's doing all kinds of things all the time, moving independently of any kind of direction from yourself. But we have an ego that creates a story that I'm doing it. My classic example is, somebody says, I took a shower, and I'm like, did you? How present were you for that shower? How involved in you were in that shower? My guess is you were thinking about everything else in the world other than that shower, and that your body was taking care of the showering in the same way that your body takes care of the driving. Once we talked, I think, a couple weeks ago about driving a clutch, right? But like once you know how to do that, your body is just doing it now for you. You're not thinking about it 99.9% of the time. Occasionally you become aware that like, oh, I just pressed in the clutch to change the gears, but most of the time it's happening independently. So there's this notion. Let me just finish this one thought, Wendy, and then I'll hand it over to you. And this is a preview of some of the busyness stuff that we're talking about. There's this notion of if I don't do X, Y, or Z, it won't get done. But that's a thought that I would really challenge, because the more that I've taken my foot off the gas, the more I've stopped sort of doing, the more I notice that the things that I'm worried that don't get done. And if you look back over your own history, even though you had a lot of worry about it, you notice that if you look back at an old to-do list, you notice that everything on that to-do list is checked. In the day that you're in, you're like, oh, this is never getting done. And you look at it for the week and I didn't do this and I didn't do that. But if you look back at an old one, you'll go like, oh, everything got done, because it all gets done. Because really, we're not doing it. We have a part that incessantly worries about stuff getting done. And we think that, oh, if I obey that part, that I'm doing it, I'm getting it done. But that's really not how it's going. Okay, Wendy.
This is a sort of half-baked thought. I'll just start
Okay.
out by saying that. So
We'll take
because okay, so I learned how to drive on standard shift, and I'm very comfortable with it. So
Okay.
I don't have a car like that, but when I rent a car or something, and it's no problem. But I was in Scotland 2 years ago, and not only do they mostly just have, I mean, you'll pay double or triple the price for an automatic shift. So not only was I driving a standard shift, but I was also driving on the other side of the road. On most of the roads outside the cities are one lane, and you're pulling over for other people. And I didn't take into
Sheep, right?
right. And then also you're using your left hand to shift instead of your right hand. I was overwhelmed. And so I guess where I'm kind of going with this is that if you take that automatic stuff away and you're trying to make it happen, things don't go that well. It was terrifying. And okay, yeah, I mean, I would have gotten used to it someday.
Sure.
But I guess the analogy or the metaphor for me is that when I try to make things happen, it just doesn't go very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that a good, I don't know if this is a good metaphor.
No, it is. It is.
Like-
It is. I mean, there's a lot of factors there too, because you're switching hands, right? So that's like I was a big tennis player, and I sort of taught myself to play left-handed a little bit, but it's not anyway. There's a lot of things that are the same that carry over. But what you're talking about there, and I spend a lot of time thinking about this too, is this whole notion of neurophysiology. So I play pickleball, right? And I go and I play in tournaments and I play with, other people. the second you go out of your normal place where you practice, and then you go into a tournament setting and you're playing in a new place, and now you've got these rules, all new people, that's a lot more different stimulus to your body, right? To the physical mechanism that it has to try to sort out because your body is always trying to sort it out. So, I mean, flipping the side of the road that you're driving on and all that is a tremendous toll to be taken on your neurophysiology. It's almost like learning it from scratch for sure.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess the thing is then, to know that if I had known all of this, I would have done my trip differently than
right,
because I never got used to it in the few
right.
days that I was there. And somehow I think knowing that means that we could structure our time differently or make different, plans for ourselves so that you don't get overloaded.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the aspects that we'll talk about is that part that is getting overloaded, which, for you and your journey makes a lot of sense to me because your mom was the way that she was. She was overwhelming, right? And it's just so happens, I think you heard me say, it's like, I guess it's no accident that we're talking about time and busyness next week because it's like I'm really working with this whole piece of overwhelm right now. So it's timely. Um, Oh, okay. Hold on. Wait, what are we reading next? We are at when I finally got up to move my body. I think we're pretty close to the end. Yeah, only like 4 or 5 paragraphs away from the end of the chapter. Okay, but now I'm moving here. So now we're going to the paragraph starts with the amazing part is the state lasted for weeks. Yeah, and that's like close to the last paragraph. Um, So yeah, I mean, again, because like I'm learning and teaching pickleball, I get a lot of sort of time to practice and to think about, sort of training the body, right? Where you're sort of training the body to do repetitive tasks. So I don't know, I don't know how much to say about that here. Um, I guess I'll just say one quick thought, right? And that a lot of that, I had somebody who I worked with who's a dog trainer. And we were talking at one point about starting to take some of the dog training techniques to use to teach our physiology. In other words, separating who we are from our body and training the body. And I haven't gone very far with this, but it's again, we get into paradox here. Let me do this for a second. Because as much as we're talking about being in the body, right? We're also talking about separating completely from the body. So when we go into a part, we are fully going into that part. In other words, we're going completely into the reaction, the physiological reaction, the terror, all of that, the energy in the body, but we're going to it in the body. And what's ironic about that, and we've all seen this many times, is the more we go into it, the more we transcend it. Right? So there's this transcendence, there's this using the body, going into the body to transcend the body, going into the animal to realize that we are much more than the animal of the human body. Right. So it's this very kind of, it's this very, like, it doesn't really make any sense, this sort of activity that we all spend a lot of time doing these days where we are being with a part, that going into the pain somehow relieves the pain. It's like on a certain level, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the only reason we do it is just because it works. But like from an intellectual standpoint, it kind of like doesn't make any sense. But the mind can and the ego can never understand our true nature. We're never going to be able to educate the ego so that it can intellectually understand and describe. So there's always this dichotomy and these parts feeling at a loss for words to describe what's really happening. And that's what we want to be completely engaged in is what's happening. And that's why touching these parts and going through them is also a very connected way of being with God. because God is an experience and we experience God generally in our body. Okay, so last thing that I have here is the amazing part that is that this state lasted for weeks. Yeah, I mean, why do these deep experiences come and go? You know, it's like, it's amazing that it lasts for a couple of weeks. On a certain level, it's amazing that it doesn't last forever. Once you've opened up to that sort of space, like the space that he's talking about here that has opened up in him, you would just say, okay, well, that's clearly a huge breakthrough. Now, why doesn't that just stick around? Like Natasha, you had a huge breakthrough. It's like, why did that come and then go? You know, which is a very interesting question that I do not know the answer to. By the by, Susie has the answer. Go ahead, Susie.
Well, I think that's part of what's so enjoyable about listening to this book. I'm listening to it on audio book, is because he's constantly making a choice to stay in that place. The world presents him with opportunities to knock him out of that place. Oh, someone showed up, something unexpected happened. Oh, I want to get practical. And he's like, no, no, I'm committed to this place. And so I think that that's a piece of what
Yeah,
you're
it's
saying.
just he's very committed to it. But even with him, you notice it comes and goes. He goes into this deep meditation, he comes out, and then he's a human being again. And we
Yeah.
see, and here's a little spoiler alert for next week. I think you'll enjoy this. So it's like, okay, here's this amazing part of the state lasted for weeks. There's all this, the silence, the absolute silence, the stillness he's talking about. And then look at the beginning. A moat of thick peace allowed nothing to reach the citadel of my elevated state. And notice the very next thing in the book that happens. From absolute peace to absolute turmoil, right? Which I
Happened.
could have easily predicted. How many of you could have easily predicted that exact thing? Yeah. How many are not surprised? Because that's exactly what happens. And so my experience with this is very much because, again, we have two things going on. You could say that we are two or more beings. You know, we might just be two. I don't know. We might be a lot more. It's hard to say. And when I really started waking up to this whole parts thing, I called it the 13 to 30 because I realized I'm not one, right? I'm the oneness, right? I'm sort of God, so to speak, but then I'm also this human being. But then there's all these parts, all these different personalities. And so when and then back when we did the workshops, I had that really cool video. I don't know if you guys remembered it, where it talks about the splitting in the brain and that even inside yourself, you're not just one. You're like, you have two sides of the brain and they have different favorite colors in different movies. So then which one is real? Like, what's really your favorite color? It's all nonsense because none of that is really you. You are this oneness. And then there's all of this stuff here. There's the biology, there's the parts, there's the different hemispheres of the brain, and none of it is truly you. These are the machines that we walk around in. And so coming back to this question of the biology and training the biology, Wendy, it's exactly here. It's like we touch these elevated states. And it's like there's only so much because we've all seen and we've all talked about the programming that we've had of these bodies and how we're sort of programmed to misery. We're sort of programmed to overwhelm, if you will, and all these various things. That system cannot handle that much light at one time. Even though your soul and your spirit can handle it in infinity, your body cannot. So, in a very real way, we are constantly touching this deep place inside of us, this truth inside of us, and we're slowly educating our bodies that this is the real thing. Our bodies don't know because of the trauma, because of all of that. So there's all this natural resistance to it. And so what happens, just like I call this backlash, you have the opening. And what that does is you have a new way of seeing. You now see the world in a different way because of this opening. But your ego space is still trapped in all the old way of thinking. But now these two are even further separated. In other words, this truth that we've just seen exposes this lie even more so as being a greater lie, right? The tension between these two. And so, in a very real way, when we touch truth, it pulls up the darkness so much more. And basically, the way that I always say it is everything that's not in alignment with that truth that you just saw is now coming up to get excised. The poison is coming up to get pushed out of your body so that you can now, so that now your body spirit mechanism is more in alignment with that new place that you've just opened. So you can see from that standpoint, this is never like I cross the finish line and I spike the football and I'm just done and I'm on easy street the way ego would say. The ego wants it to be. You can see it's this constant, continually opening to this new level of spirit and then dragging this caboose of the body into these higher realms, which does happen. It's like, the body and all this stuff does get freer, as we go, but it comes along a lot more slowly because it's so ground in this third dimensional reality, whereas our spirits are not bound. And so that's the important part of all of this, is to realize that we are that spirit and that's the truth of who we are. And the body is going to come along at its own pace or not come along. And we shouldn't be too concerned about that, because that doesn't really have anything to do with our peace. It's more of this reflection or expression of this peace that's inside of us. We really want to be as concerned as possible with this peace, touching that and elevating that. And the video I have today sort of talks about this. And where the parts will be very concerned and say, no, but I have to get my body, I have to get this, but we're not that concerned with it. So the body, the ego never really has to change or heal in order for us to be free. And it usually does. But obviously, we're all going to sort of end up dead. So it's never going to heal completely, right? There's this sort of, we're fighting a losing battle on the level of flesh and the body. But none of our travails, in other words, our injuries, or the different places in our body that are stuck, none of that has to bring us down, because that's not the reality of who we are. And we continue to work with it, right? And be with it and allow it to change, allow our bodies to become healthier, etc., as we're all taking on these habits. I think I'm going to make a video on water with lemon. I've been doing that as one of the, I think I'm gonna make a couple videos about the different places where everybody can go after they finish this challenge, in terms of like taking on new specific challenges. Because that'll be fun. Because like a lot of people are at day 65, which is super cool. And then as you guys start to see the sort of power of stacking these different things and just getting more into that positive flow, right? Because we are still walking around in these bodies, right? And so we're constantly having to deal with that equation. We can't just evolve past the body and forget that the body exists and just get to this elevated place. That's like a fantasy. And you see a lot of people trying to do that with spirituality, spiritual bypass, trying to stay in that positive all the time. But going into the body paradoxically is actually what allows you to transcend all that. So this transcendence is real. You just can't take a shortcut to transcendence, you know? Okay. That's what I'm thinking right now. Anybody have any thoughts or anything they want to say as a parting thought?
I was just gonna, you reminded me, I mean, I think that in order to hold the truth more deeply or have it more rooted, so you have to come against the opposite, because that obliges you to go deeper in each time. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, and just a note about, it made me think of a note about pain. It's like the reason
Pain.
pain is the ultimate and best teacher is because it forces you into God. It forces you into your body and into God. And I think the more that we catch on and work with that process, and start to go with it, as opposed to fighting it from the ego, the more we pick up speed a little bit, because because when you're like this, you're kind of just stuck all the time. But if the energy is pushing this way and you say, I'm going to go with the energy, you tend to move a little bit more. Right. And so we're in the process of learning to understand not to fight life. Right. We're not fighting it anymore in the same way, because it was the ego all along that was fighting it. We were never really fighting it. And now we're seeing that the ego just loves to get in fights all the time. And we start to detach from it and go like, oh, okay, I see that you want to fight. Why do you want to fight? Oh, you're scared. You're scared because you had a parent that was just so vicious with you that you're scared of life. I get that. I understand that. And now this thing wants to fight less because it's feeling heard and understood. And so life can flow, because it's not spending all its time fighting, because now it's finally getting heard and healed and helped and listened to. And so then it just kind of takes the fight out of it. So there's just less and less fight.
Amen.
Okay. I'm glad we got to get a chance to connect. This is good. And so so I'll send that an email today. And so next week we're going to do a 5-day challenge on busyness. If you can, if you have time, you can squeeze it in.
That
You
was
have time.
amazing, guys.
It's hilarious.
Sorry, I couldn't
That
make it. I
was-
was too busy.
That was very, very deep, very beautiful.
I'm
So
gonna
much to
use
think
that-
about.
And Odelia, thank you so much for, I'm gonna start using that.
You had it right, Odelia.
It's a softie. It's hard. I mean, I moved to Israel, so somebody could say my name right. Nobody in America could do it, so don't worry. You're
Odelia.
not alone. Odelia.
I thought it was
It's a softie.
Odelia.
And then
Odelia.
there's something in the soft EL combination
Oh,
that doesn't work for
Odelia.
Americans. I'm not sure
Odelia.
why.
Odelia.
Odelia.
Not bad. Yeah.
Odelia. Like daytime. Odelia.
Odelia.
It's because you're running the E
Oh,
and the L together a little
That's
bit.
right. It's
Odelia.
softer, but it's
Yeah.
better than E. So I'll take it.
Odelia.
Like the
Odelia.
place that you don't want to go is Odelia. That's way off base.
Exactly.
Oh,
Odelia.
it's
Reminds me
Odelia.
of
If you
Okay.
get into, if you
Odelia?
get into
Odelia.
Odelia, then it's a Odelia. And so it's a softer L too? Is it
Oh.
Odelia?
I guess
Odelia.
so. I guess it is a softer L.
It's a
Yeah.
little like that L is just a little bit like
Odelia.
Spanish.
How am I
Odelia.
missing?
Odelia.
Oh, there you go.
I
Okay.
thought it was Spanish. Yeah.
Odelia. Yeah.
Odelia
Odelia. Okay.
in
That
French.
makes sense to my brain.
Yeah.
That makes sense in my
Oh.
brain too.
Yeah,
Okay.
Odelia.
Yay.
Okay. See? Easy
Thank
peasy.
you.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
All right. Well, go you
Aw.
forth and prosper, everybody. And I will see you all soon. And have a lovely, blessed day. And go be amazing.
Thank you, Evan. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
everybody. It
everybody.
was
Thank
so
you,
great to
Evan.
see you.